Hi, my name is Robin McCormick, and I am the Girls FCA Lacrosse Club Director. This podcast is about all things lax. We wanted to bring you authentic, fresh, and inspiring information from coaches, players, and others in the lacrosse world, giving you the best up-to-date information in the game of lacrosse as it is evolving quickly. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Robin McCormick, and I am the Girls FCA Lacrosse Club Director. Welcome to our podcast, All Things Lax with FCA Girls. I'm excited today to introduce our guest, sports psychiatrist, Dr. T. Little bit about Dr. T. Thank you so much for being on. I'm going to just read this because that's the best way. Dr. T is a John Hopkins trained board certified adult, child, and adolescent psychiatrist, also specializing in sports psychiatry. He is the founder of the Mindset Training Institute, host of the Mindset Experience podcast, and 2023 TEDx speaker. Dr. T grew up in the greater Baltimore area and attended Gilman School, where he wrestled as an All-American. He graduated magna cum laude from James Madison University, where he was awarded varsity letter every year on the NCAA Division I wrestling team. He received his MD from the University of Maryland School of Medicine in 2004. As a member of the prestigious Combined Accelerated Program in Psychiatry, he completed both the adult residency and child and adolescent fellowship at Johns Hopkins Hospital, where he was elected chief resident from 2008 to 2009. Dr. T maintains an independent practice in Baltimore and is a facility instructor at Johns Hopkins Hospital in the Division of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. Baltimore Magazine has selected him as top doctor every year since 2016. He continues to train and has competed as an athlete in a variety of sports to this day. Given his medical and psychiatric education, combined with the athletic and personal experience, Dr. T has a unique ability and skill set to connect with and train elite athletes to ensure they have the mindset tools necessary for success. He also provides education to parents, coaches, and sports medicine professionals to better understand and support athletes to consistently perform at the highest level. Within the sport of lacrosse, Dr. T has also partnered with USA Lacrosse to integrate mental health, education, mindset training through the Athlete Mindset Seminar Series. He has worked with Kylie Ohlmiller, Taylor Cummings, Tom Schreiber, Grant Ament, Jack Kelly, Syracuse men's and women's lacrosse, and Towson University women's lacrosse, to name a few. He has also worked with our FCA Girls Club for the last 3 years with on and off the field mindset training for all of our athletes. Welcome, Dr. T. That is a lot to read through. I am super excited to have you on and just really very passionate about, as we were kind of chatting before, about the importance of mental health and really talking through it, talking about it. So thank you so much for being on.
And Robin, I'm grateful to be here. And I think, it's interesting. A lot of people talk about it, but they don't do anything about it. And I think one of the things I've really appreciated about you and your program is not only do you all talk about it, but then you take steps to make sure that your program, your kids, your coaches, your parents, all have the necessary information, but also the resources. So to me, like, this is an honor for me to come on here. So thank you for including me.
Absolutely. Well, it's been an honor to kind of work with you the last few years and really get to know you personally, but also feel like we do have a relationship with someone in the community that is that the kids feel trust and they recognize your face. They can really feel like they can come to you, and that's really special. And we want to build that into our program. So thank you for being part of that. So how does it feel? I know you are doing your own very successful podcast, and how's it feel to be on the other side of this?
I love it, right? It keeps me humble too, because you realize like being on the other side of it is, I'm more nervous, I think, being a guest than I am a host. because I want to make sure that I do right by you. So no, this is important and this is awesome and it's going to be a lot of fun.
You will. I think in the process when I'm coming up with questions, a lot of times I'm like, getting ready and I'm like, oh gosh, these are good questions. So like write them on my phone when I'm thinking of them, but they just came so naturally and quick when I was thinking of sitting down with you. Um, Really quick, we did note as well, like how you yourself are still training, pushing yourself. How important is that to you? And we were just talking about these two amazing events you just had the opportunity to do. Just share a little bit about those two events and why you do continue to push yourself.
Yeah, so at the end of August, I did an event called 29029. And for those folks that don't know that, 29029 is the elevation of Mount Everest. Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world. So I didn't climb Mount Everest, but what I did do is this event rents out ski mountains in North America, right? And these are like black diamond, high level mountains. And the purpose of the experience, if you will, is that you're hiking up the mountain and then you're taking a gondola down and you're hiking up the mountain and you repeat that over and over until you hit the accumulation of Mount Everest. It's a 36-hour event, right? It's incredibly challenging physically, but it's also like mentally, I would say even more challenging because it's just hard to prepare. Like you don't know what the mountain is going to throw at you. And one is the terrain changes. I was out in Whistler, Canada this time. It's a 4 mile mountain, like 4 mile trail, and it goes up over 4,000 feet. And you have to do 8 of them. And so like you go through, but there's times where you're on what appears to be like a gravel road, and then you're in a forest, and then you're climbing over roots, and then you're on a boulder, and then there's like steps that are embedded, but the steps are like not regular steps that are in your house. Like these are huge steps. Um, and there's like a lot that you go through. And you have to figure out a plan, a strategy, your hydration, your nutrition, if you're going to sleep, when you're going to sleep, if you're going to rest, what that looks like. And all of those things not only impact you in the moment, but like down the line, right?
Mhm.
So I did that, and that was the second time I'd done that. The year before, I'd done a very different mountain. I'd done Jackson Hole, Wyoming. They were very, very different. 3 weeks after that, I did an event called Running Man. And Running Man is a very interesting concept where it's effectively a running festival and all different folks from all different places with all different purposes, all different stories. Like it's a very, very unique experience. And that one is a 1 mile loop. It's an old horse track and it's a 1 mile loop. Now you get to pick your distance. So you can do a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, a full marathon, or a 50K. But of course, for me, like if I'm going to show up to these things, I want to give it my all. And so I decided I was going to do a 50K, which is 31 miles. Um, and so it's in a circle, right? And so it's boring, it's monotonous, it's
Yep.
tedious, the scenery doesn't change. But to your point, like, why do I do these things? I think there's multiple reasons. One is that I love competing and I love challenging myself. But I think the bigger reason is that I think that for young athletes, they're so, just consistently surrounded by adults in their life that are telling them what to do. They're telling them that they need to work harder, right? They need to go out, put in more hours. They need to run faster. They're telling them all these things they need to do. And oftentimes those adults are not doing the same things themselves, right? They're saying, hey, when I was an athlete 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, like this is what we did. But it's different. The athletic experience is different. The challenges are different. The sports are different in some ways, right? Like, and so to me, if I'm going to ask anything of an athlete, I need to show them that I'm doing it myself, right? And so part of it is truly the ability to be credible, right? Despite all the things you just read, nobody cares about that if it's in the past, right? Like nobody cares. But if you're continuing to show up every day and you're working hard and you're putting yourself through these mental and physical challenges, I think there's a sense of like, wow, this guy really does know what he's talking about, right? And you see it. The other thing I think is that for me, when you're talking about mental health and you're talking about mindset and you're talking about those things, these are things that you need to continue to train. And so even though I know the information that I teach, the information that I share, I know it's backed in science. I teach the science. I've worked with so many athletes on so many levels, and have seen the benefit of what I do. I need to continue to like sharpen it and prove it to myself. And so it's also me training my own mind consistently over and over again to be able to like put myself through these challenges and know like, okay, now what? It's the middle of the night and you're questioning yourself and you're tired and you're like, what am I doing? And you're in the middle of this mountain. What are you going to do? Like, are you going to stop? Are you going to take a break? Are you going to ask somebody for help? Like, are you going to keep going? Like, what does that look like? And so when you can navigate those things over and over again, right? Even running in a circle, like over and over. But that's what life is, right? Like we have
Mhm.
challenges that are unexpected. We have like, we think every day is going to be interesting. It's the same thing, the same drills, the same skills. Like, but the ability to like become comfortable with like the uncomfortable, the ability to like find things that are interesting in the mundane, like those aren't things that like you can just do unless you've actually put yourself in those situations. And so to me, it allows me to train myself. It allows me to get better at what I do. It allows me to be more credible, more relatable. Um, and in a weird way, like it's fun. And I meet a lot of people that I wouldn't otherwise have met. And that's what's so cool about sport, right? Like you meet people from different cities, different towns, different experiences. And at this point in our lives, Robin, like unless we're doing things like how are we going to meet new people, right? It's the same people, right? Like, and so to me, when I go to these events, I meet people that I never would have met and I have conversations that I never would have had. And I build friendships and relationships. And I've had several of my podcasts and I've worked with several of them. And so there's so much that goes with it. It really kind of fills my cup.
It's amazing, and I think, it's why I kind of associate with you really well because I love that about you. I feel like you are so onto something because I was a trainer myself. I ran my own business and training, and I myself love to train. I did triathlons. Like I love that part of like you, just like competition and pushing myself. And I realized, like you, like in my work, as I was training myself and pushing myself into uncomfortable places, I realized that that's how I grew. And so like I could, for lack of better words, put on the shoes of my clients and really understand what they're doing. And like you said, like I think it makes you a better doctor. It makes you associate better with your clients. Um, and and it also helps you to live life. I love how, like, I did a prison ministry for 12 years. Totally out of my comfort zone, loving on women that like I would meet them, I'd go in, I didn't know why they were there or whatever. It was totally any given moment, any, like yeah, I didn't know what to expect. And it was putting myself in an uncomfortable place where I got to meet amazing people, humans that I could sit next to and just love on them. And it helped me to grow as a human being so much. It's one of the most sacred things I've ever been able to do. But I totally get everything that you said. And um, I wanted to talk about, how you did mention, the control, yeah, or control the controllables. There's a few things that, as we spend time together, I hear Dr. T say all the time. And these three things that come to my mind are one more, control the controllables, and gratitude. So why those three focuses and why do you feel so passionately about those specifically?
Yeah, so and I appreciate you asking about it. It's funny because through my life, through my experiences through sports, like there's all these quotes, there's sayings, there's mantras, like, and you see them on t-shirts and on posters and like lyrics of songs, and people are just throwing them around. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, people are just saying these things, but like, what's the intention behind them? What's the meaning? Like, if you're just saying like, LFG all over the place and you're just yelling and screaming, right? And most
Right.
people know what LFG is, right? Like, let's F and go. If you just say it, but there's no intention or purpose or even action behind it, then it just becomes like a cliche, right? It just becomes a cliche. And so part of it is, I'm big on language and I'm big on the thoughts that we have, and we communicate our thoughts through our words, right? And you and I have talked about this, right? But there's this concept called, of affirmations and affirmation statements that people like to use, and people are big on affirmations. And I personally agree with the idea and the concept of affirmations. What frustrates with me is the way people use them. Like people tend to use them in certain situations when they're really struggling, when they're really nervous, and it's always something different, right? But again, like the only way that we're truly going to understand something, believe something, and be able to utilize it is through repetition, right? Any skill that we learn on the field, like you can't just do it once or like bust it out in like a certain moment and say, let me try this. Like you have to have a level of confidence, and that confidence comes from repetition. It comes from like seeing it and hearing it and knowing it, right? And so part of it is developing sayings that I call signature statements, not affirmation statements, signature statements that I can use consistently. So control the controllables actually is the title of my TED Talk, right? And the idea, and I've heard it before, but I've never really honestly heard it the way that I use it. And so people talk a lot about like, oh, we have to control the controllables, and then they say different things. And as I was sort of putting things together, I started understanding, wow, through life, like through my experiences as an athlete, as a medical student, um, as a professional, I myself, including all of the other folks that I work with, we get so caught up in the things that are out of our control, right? Like the weather, the call, what our teacher said, what our parents think, like what we got on this. Like we're always focused on all these things out of our control. And so what happens, right? We get overwhelmed, we get anxious, we get demoralized, we can get depressed. And I see so many people in my field, in terms of like patients and clients and athletes that I see that come in and they talk a lot about the things that are getting in their way, and they're largely out of their control, right? And so I can sit there and say, oh, you need to focus on what's in your control, or you need to focus on what you can do, and blah, blah, blah. But if I don't have intention and meaning behind it, then it's just advice and guidance that to some extent can become very insulting, right? Because like they're not trying to actively focus on the things out of control. This is the way we're wired. And so I really started to put together what are the three controllables? Like, in my opinion, what are the three things that we can control? And the three that I came up with, the first two are effort and attitude. And that's something a lot of people say, right? And you and I have talked about this as well, as I think of effort as not just a physical thing, but largely a mental thing. And it has to do with like what we focus on and the intention we put behind things. So that was something that I thought no matter what, like sometimes things are physically challenging, sometimes things can be difficult, but we can focus our intention and our effort. Like we can always control that. We can always control what we do, what we choose to focus on. And that's something that, comes with effort, right? And I'll get to one more, but one more kind of fits within that. Attitude has to do with the way we think. And a lot of people don't realize that you have a choice in the way that you think, right? Most of us leave it up to chance and we just sort of let our thoughts happen. And then we kind of like let them guide us. The problem with that is that we have up to 60,000 thoughts a day. 80% of them are negative, 90% of them are repetitive. And those thoughts directly impact our emotions and our actions. And so a lot of people don't realize you can control the way you think, and it has to do with what you tell yourself, and it has to do with what you say to yourself consistently, right? Um, and so that's one of my controllables. And then gratitude is actually the third controllable, right? And I hear other people talk about effort, attitude, preparation. I hear people talk about effort, attitude, toughness. To me, preparation is part of effort. To me, toughness is part of attitude, right? Like, but gratitude is something that to me is so, so important for multiple reasons, right? Like, neurochemically, when we're grateful or we practice intentional gratitude, we release certain chemicals that allow us to feel happy. They feel less anxious. We feel more connected. All of those things are directly correlated with success. If we're happier, we're less anxious, and we're more connected to whatever we're doing or who we're doing it with, we're going to do
Yeah.
better, right? So it's not just like be happy, be grateful, like this very passive thing. Like, no, like that's an important part of success. But it also allows us to be able to put in more effort, right? It shifts our attitude. And so I talk about those three, and in each one of them, we can get into it if you want. It's also in my TED Talk. They're active, intentional ways to do it, not just to say it, right? And so those are sort of the controllables, and that ties into gratitude. The one more concept, and I appreciate you bringing that up, it kind of ties into effort, but the way that it really originated for me was, and everybody talks about getting 1% better. I want to get 1% better. And I'm like, okay, well, like, what is that? Or give 110%, right? People say these things, and I'm like, okay, well, what does that even mean? Like 110%. Well, if I'm doing 10 reps, which is a lot of times the standard we go by, right? Like you're doing 10 reps of this, 10 reps of that, 10% is one, right? If you're doing 1% better, oftentimes like that's one. And so I started to think about what does that mean? And I was like at the gym and seeing these workouts on the board and it says like 10 reps of this, 10 reps of that. And I'm working with teams and watching them in the gym and it says 10 reps and every hardworking team does 10. Like, well, everybody's doing what everybody else is doing. So how is like this team going to get any better than that team or than that team? Like they're all doing what's expected and they do a very good job. And so I started thinking, okay, I'm going to do 10 like everybody else, but I'm going to do one more. And Robin, I want to be real clear here because I've said this. I'm very aware, right? I went to med school. Like I know that 10 plus 1 is 11. Like I'm very aware of that. But in my mind, it's not 11. I'm not focusing on the outcome of 11. I'm focusing on 10 and then I do one more. And what I'm telling myself is that when everybody else stops at 10, you go further, which effectively means you're outworking everybody else. And so that's competitive. It fuels me. I also know that when you think you've given it your all, you truly think you're done, you can go further.
Right.
But Robin, I do it when I read. Like if I'm reading and I finish, let's say I finish a chapter and I go to close my book, I'm like, one more, and I read one more page, right? I got two little boys. I got a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, right? When I read to my 4-year-old, we read a book at night, and then he goes, "Daddy, one more," and I go, "One more." Like I look at him and I go, "One more," right? And then he goes, "Daddy, one more teeny tiny book," and I know he's stalling. I know he
Yeah.
is, but I
Right.
look at him and I'm like, one more because I know an extra 3 minutes or 5 minutes with him is not going to throw off his bedtime. But what I also know is that that extra time that I spend with him in that one more book is meaningful and we connect. And I know what I'm telling myself is whatever else you think you have that's more important, it's never more important than your son. But the fact that I say it in my workout, the fact that I say it when I'm reading, the fact that I say it like, even if I send an email, a lot of times I'll write the email and I'm like, read it one more time, right? And I read it one more time. It's like I'll catch certain things, but it's this idea of like being intentional and putting in a little more effort. I come back to that event I just did, Running Man, right? It was a 1 mile loop, Robin, and it's 31 laps
Right.
according to everybody else. But when I'm running it, I'm literally focusing on that one lap, right? And I'll even tie this into what you said earlier. This time around, what I did is each lap, I thought about somebody meaningful in my life. So my
Mm.
first lap, I thought about my wife. And I was like talking to her in my
Yeah.
lap, right, as I'm running. And so I
Yeah.
was practicing gratitude within the lap. But when I finished that lap, I would tell myself, do one more. And I would do one more. When everybody else is coming and say, what number are you on? What lap are you on? I would say, I just have one more. And they would look at me like I was crazy. And then I kept saying it, right?
Like
And
I
they're
keep seeing that guy.
like, this guy, what
Keep
does he
saying one
mean?
more.
And there's a woman there that's like cheering everybody. And she was there last year. And just so you remember, I'm the one more guy. She goes, that's right. And so every time she goes, you just have one more lap, right? I'm like, just one more. And when I finished it, so I did 31 miles. And you know what I said? And when I was done, I said one more. And I did one more. Like I could barely walk. And I did one more. But it was like each one was me thinking about somebody, focusing on them, being grateful, controlling my attitude about how I was viewing this race, right? And fundamentally just doing one more. And how often are we so focused on like, man, like this team is so good, or how am I going to play all these time, blah, 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 blah. We're focused on all these things. But if you just do one and then you do one more, like it's an incredible thing. So not only have I done that with me, but I can give you example after example after example of all these college athletes who like go in and they're terrified of their run test. And they call me and they're like, Dr. T, I'm terrified of my run test. And I'm like, what do you have to do? And they're like, 2100s. I'm like, no, that's not what you have to do. They're like, no, 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 that's what we do. I'm like, no, that's not what you have to do. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, can you just run one run 100? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, so run 100. And they're like, then what? And I go, just do one more. And they're like, wait, it's that easy. I'm like, it really is that easy, but you have to train it. You have to say it. You don't just show up and do it. And so that's kind of how those three statements all tie together. And they have become, it's funny you say this, when I think of Dr. T, because now I have people that will like send me things and be like, I thought of you. I'm doing one more. Like just recently, a college athlete's like, I think I'm going to get those words tattooed on my arm because of how meaningful that statement and what you've instilled in me means to me. Somebody else is like, I just read one more book to my kid, and they'll send me a picture of like, if you give a mouse a cookie or whatever the book is. But it's like these are pro athletes and high level athletes that are using it not just in their athletic life, but in their kind of personal and real life. And it's had an impact. And so they're like, Dr. T, I'm using your phrase. It's not my phrase. I think use it better than most.
Well, there's so much. Gosh, just by you talking about how, I mean, even how passionate you are as you're talking about. I mean, I love the fact that you've really dissected this. I mean, this is something that is, like you said, part of your life, part of your daily disciplines, and then helping athletes kind of navigate through that. But it's so rich, and it actually biblically ties in when you talk about, like, the Bible's very repetitive, and it's because in our human minds, we need that repetition. We need to know. I think it says like over 100 times, "Do not fear, for I am your God." And it's just like our human mind. If we're talking about mentalness, we need simplicity. We need like this repetition. And for me, like as you're doing your laps, and that's what I do when I run. It's like I'm thinking of someone, I'm praying about them. It distracts me from like the 31 laps. It is just such a great way, like you said, to help athletes with the challenges that they're facing. Simplify it, break it down. I know you've talked to our athletes about the process. Like, what's the process? Have, like, just 3 to 5 steps. Don't It's not all this. It's just this simplicity is kind of what this I'm hearing you say. And I think, as we, and biblically, kind of like, as we claim things in our life, as we say positive things, as we lift up gratitude, thankfulness, it's like we're prophesizing it into being. Like, I mean, why focus on that 80% negativity of those thoughts and just try to really focus on encouraging, helpful thoughts that are going to project us forward, like you would say, give us the success we're looking for. Um, well, as you are doing a podcast, you're interviewing a ton of amazing people all over the country, athletes, professionals. What would you say are, and you could give me a short list, are some commonalities that you just keep hearing from these guests?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, one that comes up consistently is grit, right? Like people talk about grit and
Mhm.
that grit factor and all that, but like, and different people have different opinions about that. But like to me, the ability to like endure discomfort, the ability to like actually like seek it out, enjoy it, understand that that's a part of the growth. That's something that I see consistently with a lot of these folks. It's not that they're necessarily like the most talented. It's not necessarily that like they're, the most skilled, and a lot of them have skill and they have a lot of talent, but like that's not why they're so successful, because there's a lot of skilled, talented people that don't end up becoming successful. But it's this like willingness to really like dig deep and be able to like learn more about themselves, be able to like get better at whatever they're doing, right? Like that whole like one more mentality, right? Whatever it is for them. That's something that I see consistently. And that's like one that I think a lot of people can point to. The other thing though that I see that I'm always impressed by and I love it is humility, right? Like you think that like these folks that are achieving so much, and I've had like Olympic gold medalists, world champions, Super Bowl champions, like military like heroes, like a lot of really interesting people, a lot of lacrosse people. But like they've all accomplished so much that like young people, including myself, I'm not saying I'm a young person, but young people, including myself, like we look up to them like, man, like, how are you doing that? You're amazing. They're so humble. Like, they're so humble. And that I think is a really, really important quality to success, because when you get really, really, really kind of arrogant and high on yourself, you start to lose sight of like being comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Like those details, the repetitiveness, like you start to like cut corners a little bit. You start to like, get a little bit lackadaisical, and someone will knock you off. Someone will knock you off. But to me, the great ones are the ones that always continue to work and hustle. And in some ways, like it's interesting because they don't believe that they're the great ones. Like they don't believe they're great. And that to me is also fascinating, right? I was just on a call earlier and somebody talked to me about, I have this imposter syndrome. And like, and I said, yeah, so do I. Like, but why are we thinking of that as a bad thing? Like, if you think that you don't belong, but you're there, you're going to work really, really hard to belong. Like you're going to say, okay, what do I need to do? Like I'm here, like what do I need to do? Right? Like I don't want to let these people down. Like I don't want them to think that I'm a fraud. So I need to continue to work hard, right? And then it goes into that grit. And so there's a lot of other things, but those are two things that I think, and they're correlated with success, and there's been a lot of different things about them. But I think the grit and the humility are huge. The third one I would say, Robin, is that gratitude, right? And one of the questions I always ask at the end of my podcast has to do with gratitude. And I'm always shocked about, first of all, I'm shocked that like it throws them off, right? But
Like,
then they're like, wait, oh, that's a hard question. I didn't expect that. I'm like, what did you expect? Like, you're an Olympic champion. You thought this was going to be easy? Like, if
right.
you can do that, like, and that's where that humility comes in because they're not like, oh, blah, blah, blah. But then, like, the thoughtfulness of the things that they're grateful for, it's always fascinating and it's just interesting. And oftentimes they don't realize how grateful they are until they're answering the question. And they're like, wow, like I haven't thought about that in a long time. Like, thank you. And then they're grateful to me for kind of like allowing them that moment to reflect. And that's something that I see really, really consistently with people that are successful. So those three things, grit, humility, and gratitude, they're so big. And it's like something anyone can do, right? Like nothing of that has to do with talent, skill, experience. Those are all human things that if we truly practice and we're intentional with, we can all do. But that to me is like, if you're really good at those three things, the chances of you being successful and happy goes up exponentially.
Right. Well, I would, anyone that's really kind of a master at what they do, or, I love watching like the documentaries on some of the great like athletes of our time, because it takes a certain grit, but like intensity, almost like a craziness to get to a level, to achieve that. But I think all athletes of any level go through opposition, and the opposition hopefully keeps motivating that humility, like as much as somebody might look on the outside, I mean, like especially the student athlete, it's so rigorous. The schedule is so rigorous, especially nowadays. Like I often say, these high school athletes are like back in the day how it was when I was in college, like the intensity of literally almost no days off. Um, and they just grind, and they do have to have grit, and they need to stay up late and get their schoolwork done. And a lot of these athletes are super intelligent, and there's just so much going on. So I really appreciate that humility piece, because I think it really takes a special person to be humble, because it actually allows people to start listening. I think as soon as someone, and I always think about this, humility, being authentic, it's like like a veil drops. As soon as someone can like release like their story or share a little bit of something they struggled with, you're in. Like it's such a gift, and I'm always drawn to people that are more humble and authentic because of that very thing. And I feel like I'm always looking to learn and grow from somebody like that. They could be, like you're saying, all the people that you're interviewing are very gifted in what they do, and yet that humility really helps people tune in. So that's amazing, and a great opportunity that we have the ability to do these podcasts and to have these conversations. Um, Another good question. What would you say most athletes that you're working with are battling with on and off the field?
And so I think on the field, a lot of it comes down to like confidence, right? Like, and that's I'm gonna put that word in quotes, right? Because confidence is something we think we understand, but I think we actually don't understand it very well. Um,
Yeah.
but confidence is something struggles, and part of it could be related to anxiety. It could be related to, you know, actively not being in a situation that they want to be in or not having the performance that they want to. And so that's a big reason a lot of people come to me. And want help with, right? Because it's impacting their ability to be able to play the way what they want to play, or even to be able to enjoy it. I had an athlete in my office yesterday, and he said, "Look, like I only have fun when I win, but I want to be able to have fun all the time, right?" And so his enjoyment was correlated with like the outcome, right? And what he was identifying was that like, no, I want to be able to have fun. And that to me ties into confidence because if you have the confidence that you're going to be able to enjoy yourself no matter what, that's going to open you up. And so that's a big reason that I think a lot of athletes come to me and struggle with. Now, some of these athletes have achieved a lot of success. Like, and others might look at it and be like, wait, why aren't they confident? They're like a multiple time MVP, blah, 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 blah. Because they're human beings. And human beings have human being conditions, and anxiety is one of them. Fear is one of them. Doubt is one of them. And those things are going to manifest at different times. And one of the things that they affect is our confidence. Confidence is also an interesting thing. And, we're talking about different things. But I had a gentleman on my podcast who your audience probably is not going to know, but his name is Mark Schultz. And Mark Schultz was a Olympic champion in wrestling, NCAA champion, won a UFC fight on 24 hours notice. He actually wrote the book and the movie Foxcatcher, which is about
Okay.
his brother Dave's death. Um, and Mark said something to me very interesting in one of our conversations. He said, confidence is built or destroyed every single day. And I was like, wow. And so when I thought about that, it's like a lot of people like, oh, I want to, it's like they think they either have confidence or they don't, or they're like, I need to get my confidence back. Like, what do
Yeah.
you mean you want to get it back? Like, if you're going and looking for something you lost, you're going to drive yourself crazy. Like, think about when you lose something and you're like looking in the dirt and is it here? Is it there? No, but if you can build it every single day and it's within you, then that's empowering, right? Because then it comes back to like, what can I control? What can I focus on, right? And if I focus on my effort, attitude, gratitude, right, and I do one more, I'm going to be more confident. And so that was a very interesting thing. It also shows that even if you think you're the most confident person in the world, it can be destroyed like that, right? And so it's an ever evolving thing that you can actually mold and build, right? And that was an important concept that I've talked about a lot and really integrated. So that's one thing. But I think off, right? I think off the field, two things that I see athletes struggle with a lot. One is their sense of self and their sense of identity independent of sport. And we know that,
Mhm.
it's supposed to be what you do, not who you are. We know that. At the same time, when we're really good at something, that's what everybody recognizes. And everybody's like, oh, you play lacrosse, you're a lacrosse player. Like everybody's wearing their swag, their gear, like walking around with their bags. So like the way you look, the way people refer to you, like how you're recognized, by everybody is all has to do with what you do, right? And that becomes who you are. And so it's really, really hard to separate that out. You also use the word obsessive or you use the word crazy, but
Mhm.
it's if you want to be really good at something, you have to dedicate a lot of time. And so,
Yeah.
how do you then separate who you are if you're spending all your time doing it? Like, because you are a product of like who you hang out with and what you do and all of that. And so, like, on some level, we're saying, like, don't identify yourself as a lacrosse player. Like you're a human being, you're a student athlete, you're a human above an athlete. We say all that, but guess what? Like everybody you hang out with, where you go, the clothes you wear, who you eat with, what you eat, when you eat, like it's all programmed for you because of an athlete. And so, like, that's a really hard concept because on some level we say one thing, but we're actually doing another one, and kind of helping them navigate that. And then the other one, and I'm going to put this word in quotes too, is the word balance, right? A lot of student athlete humans struggle with balance. And the reason I'm putting balance in quotes is because, and I think I've said this to you maybe, I think balance is BS, right? We are all trying to like balance everything, but when we balance everything, we're trying to give everything equal time and attention.
You can.
Well, I mean, if you did, you would be horrible at a lot of things, right? Like if you had 10 things like your school, your sport, yourself, your family, your friends, blah, 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 your sleep, nutrition, like if you gave equal amount of time and attention to everything, you'd be given like 10% to everything, which means you'd be a horrible student, a horrible lacrosse player, a horrible friend, right? Like a horrible family member. And so like we're trying to achieve this thing that number one is unattainable, but even if we did, we would be horrible. And so I talk to a lot of athletes about again, this idea of balance is BS. Like we're not trying to like if you're trying to achieve balance, you're trying to achieve mediocrity at a lot of things. What we want to do is we want to be great at everything we do. And how do we do that? And how to be more intentional with one thing at a time and being able to like again focus on what you can control, really being intentional, but also then making sure that like when you walk off the field, right? And you're with your family or with your friends, that's where you are. That's who you are, right? And so you're not a lacrosse player. You are a daughter or a son or a friend. When you're in the classroom, you're a student. And so from like a distance, it looks like you're doing a lot of things. But like when I'm standing next to you, you're actually doing one thing at a time. And helping them understand that and giving them permission to like only focus on one thing at a time versus thinking like I have to live, breathe, eat lacrosse. Otherwise, I'm never going to be great. Well, if you do that, like that's exhausting, right? Like and you're actually going to be worse. And so those are two things that, again, reframing it, helping them understand it, and then giving them actionable ways to integrate it has been like really cool and rewarding.
Yeah, no, I like because I, I think I've talked to the club a lot about, why we're building in mental health or on the field, off the field training into our program because, I was an athlete, I performed at a high level. That part of my game was never tended to. I felt like, why would I run this club and not focus on that part? And I think the older they get into high school and then on to college, it becomes pretty much the battle of the mind all the time. They've got the skill. They've played for years. They're doing the skill every day in and out. And it's like, how do I fine tune? I'm constantly talking. I have a senior in high school, a sophomore in high school. One's going to go play in college. The other one will get to the recruiting process this fall. It's like always we're talking about confidence and just walking on the field. And a lot of it is like what you're saying about, speaking life to yourself. Like, I can do this. I'm the best on the field. Like, it's the mind and how we set, but we can have the best game ever. And the next day, like you said, your friend said, it's like within 24 hours, you could lose your confidence and it's being rebuilt all the time. And I think that whole process, even as an athlete, helped me in life, be a mom and, how hard it is to be a parent. Like these things that, I mean, these 27s right now are going through this recruiting process. They could have thought they were such a strong player and where's my calls and why am I not getting calls? And it's this constant, I don't know. I just like the way it's ongoing. It's like you're constantly producing that. And you talked about identity. Identity is a big thing that why I'm doing this director. Like it's very important to me to, and I think for FCA, our whole thing is like our identity is in Christ and who he says we are as sons and daughters of Christ. Um, he says who we are. We're not just athletes or lacrosse players. We are honored and we get the opportunity to play that, but that is not who we are. Like God establishes who we are, and we can do all things. So I think reminding them that, and I mean that's a gift that will give them a foundation for the rest of their lives, and that's why it's so important because we do try to compete the older we get, but eventually the sports that thing kind of it's not forever. So, well,
No,
thank you.
I think it's a good point. No, I think it's a good
Yeah.
point. And I appreciate you bringing up the recruiting thing because that highlights like the confidence and the identity and all these things I just talked about. Like you think you have it figured out, and then you get into that, and now somebody else is essentially telling you if you're good enough because of who you are as a player. And so the thing that always comes out has come up multiple times in the last couple of weeks, right? But also comes up year after year is young athletes calling me and saying this isn't what I expected. Like I didn't I thought I knew what I was gonna get. And it's not even in terms I thought so and so was gonna call or so and so was gonna call, but they're like, this process is not at all what I expected. And they're why is it going like this? And it's fascinating, right? Because like everybody's preparing them for the process, but they're preparing them in one way, and more often than not, it doesn't play out. And even if they end up at the school that they thought they would or they wanted to, it still doesn't play out the way they expected. And so it really shakes their confidence and their sense of self and their identity and who am I and why is this happening? And we have these conversations all the time and have been able to help young people navigate it, but it really messes with your sense of self and your identity. And even if you get through it and you end up at wherever you want to go, like you're rattled, and now your confidence is and for some of these kids it's like the first time they've really been rattled and they really start to question themselves at an age and a stage where they think they know who they are or who they should be, and it's like it's a very vulnerable period of time. And so you're then talking about mental health and all these things that like these things start to play out, right? Because like now everybody who told them they love them and they're amazing and they're their number one kind of didn't start treating them that way. And now they're like, wait, so what does this really mean? And when people say this, is this what they mean? And so like that starts to play out in other relationships, right?
Right.
As they grow and as they evolve and they start to like become a little bit hesitant and a little bit guarded. It's a really, really interesting, unfortunate thing, but it is what it is. And so part of it is helping empower these young people and their families to be able to navigate it and be able to like bring the game to them versus them having to play somebody else's game. And I'm not talking about lacrosse. I'm talking about the recruiting process.
Right. Yeah, I mean, going through it last year with my 26, and then, next year it'll be our 28. It would definitely up and down process. And I will say one of the most challenging mental times to watch her go through. I have to trust that God ultimately is going to bring something from that time, whether it's resilience or just learning that God does have a plan and it will play out. It's just not this moment. But it is, we talk about mental health, and this is kind of ties into my next question, but it's like, are we supporting these athletes as much as we can, especially through this process? The recruiting process, I think, has some brokenness to it. So, with that, it's kind of what we're talking about here, but I know that we pour physically into these athletes on a daily basis, right? They are grinding every day, they're training most every day. When do you think, or will there be a time where we spend as much focus on the mental game in comparison to our physical game?
Man, so the question is when will it happen or if it'll happen?
Do you see a future where
If you want
you
my
could
honest
identify
opinion,
with these things as equal?
if you want my honest opinion, then the answer is no. I don't. I don't. I think it should be, right? In fact, I almost feel like the mental piece should be a bigger piece than the physical piece because ultimately for the majority of these athletes, right, like what affects their performance on game day is not based on, again, talent, skill, or experience. Like they've all trained really hard. They're getting great coaching. And like, again, whether you're at FCA or another club team, right? We'll just leave it at that. Like you have access to like phenomenal coaches, phenomenal resources, phenomenal facilities. Like you have other kind of shooting coaches, strength and conditioning coaches you're going to. Like there's a wealth of support in this sport in particular, right? And there's a lot of resources in this sport in particular. And so most people, not everybody, but most people have access to a lot of physical resources. But like the thing that impacts their ability to be where they want to be is not the physical thing, right? Like if they were getting all that, then everybody would be, and that was the most important thing. Everybody would be playing at a high level all the time, right? And everybody would end up where they want to go, and every kid in Maryland would end up at their number one school. It's plain and simple, right? And there's other areas that are great at lacrosse, but for the intents and purpose, like the competition here and the building and being lacrosse, you have a lacrosse IQ that is so high that most every kid in the Maryland area, if they want to play somewhere, has an opportunity to play somewhere. Even
Right.
if they've never been on the field on their high school team, will be on the have an opportunity to play somewhere, right? If that's what they want. Because coaches know they understand the game and they understand how to work hard and they know how to train. Like they know what they're getting in a lacrosse player. But as a human being, we're really lacking. So I personally think it should get more attention because it's going to go directly in terms of their performance on the field, but it's going to impact them well beyond. And if you have a happy, healthy player, you're going to have a better player. If you have a happy, healthy, confident person, like they're going to create
Mm.
a culture where your program is going to win. Like it's a necessity for winning is having happy, healthy people, right? Like that's a necessity to win. And so if you really look at why are some of these programs not achieving the level of success, and they have crazy facilities and they have crazy athletes and they have crazy resources, like why? It's because their athletes are quote unquote not mentally tough or they're not strong or they need whatever. But that's a mental thing if that's how you look at it. It might also be because they're anxious and they're overwhelmed and they're scared. It may be because they're right. There's a lot of things. So I personally think it's more important if now this
Yeah.
is coming,
Yeah.
truth be told, from a mental health provider.
Yeah.
The reason I don't think it's ever going to play on the same level is because it's so much easier to measure physical progress. Like you can measure someone's like strength. You can measure somebody's speed. You can measure goals. Like in terms of like we scored 3 goals, they scored 2 goals. Like you can measure those things very easily. And so to me, it's like low hanging fruit to say, well, look, like we did this and our athletes are stronger, they're faster, we're measuring their heart rates, we're measuring their sleep. Like those are all things. And someone's mind and their mental health, if you will, is so much harder to measure. It's also like someone's anxiety is going to be different than somebody else's anxiety. Somebody's depression is going to be different than somebody else's depression. Like there's life experiences, there's biology, there's behaviors, there's learning, environment. There's so many variable things that, again, all these things out of your control that impact one's mental health. And so, like, if you're going to go down that road, like, you have to be really knowledgeable. You have to be really skilled. You have to be willing to bring people in, like myself.
Yeah.
And for a lot of teams and a lot of programs, like, that's a lot of work. And it's like, no, we're just focused on this season and our athletes this season. But if you're like, we're focused on our people and our people before they get here and while they're here and after they're here, we actually would be more successful. I just don't know that it's just hard to like sell somebody on that, right? Because it's an idea and a theory which has a ton of science behind it. At the
Yes.
same time, it's like, yeah, but I know that if we have a new turf, people are going to want to come here. And if we have a new weight room, we're going to get more recruits. And if we have better equipment and a better strength coach, our kids are going to get stronger. Like, look
Right.
what our average squat is. Look what our average speed is. Like, look, okay, like, sure, but that's the reason you're not winning is because your star tore their ACL. It's because 5 of your kids are terrified and they're anxious and their self-image is not what it could be and what it should be and what they deserve.
Right. I mean, folks, you heard it here from the professional. I'm just saying more health. I feel like I do think we're entering a landscape where now professional teams and, college teams are bringing more people like yourself on, right? Coach Dr. T, like are now on the sidelines. I know, I think locally, St. Paul's, the boys team now has a coach full time that is focused on mental health. I mean, it's the same concept too as nutrition. Like, the elite athletes, the professionals focus on nutrition because it's literally the extra edge they can get. If their nutrition is beating their opponent and their opponent is just as talented, but they're fueling their body better, that's a little edge, right? We're always looking for an edge. And I hope parents and coaches are listening because a happy kid is going to be more successful. So ultimately your program is going to see more success because just like you're saying is like we are actually servicing the whole athlete and we're not neglecting that part of them that actually you know you think about these tough things that a triathlon or anything, you have to have this mental game happening, but you also have to, your body can go further if your mind allows it much more than like you can talk yourself where there's a will, there's a way. You can talk yourself into that one more. You can, like, and that's so important. Like, why are we not connecting this? Like, that is how we take those kids to the next level. Please don't ignore that part of their who they are. We're physical and we're emotional, we're mental. We need to make sure, and that's why I wanted to have you on. It's just so important. Dr. T, I feel like, with anxieties and talking about mental health, there's a stigma. And this breaks my heart as well, because therefore, then we don't talk about it the way I think it should be a normal conversation. So, and I know we have to wrap, I could talk to you all day about this type of stuff, but how do we overcome the stigma of mental health and anxiety and wanting the landscape to go from fear of talking about these things we walk around on eggshells to becoming normal conversation? We're all, like you said, we're human. We have these thoughts. How do we normalize it?
Yeah, so I appreciate you saying that, right? There's certain words that I've started to really dislike, and one of them is stigma. And here's why. Because I think that like in our attempt to break the stigma, in some ways I think we're perpetuating it. And here's what I mean, right? Like we are talking so much about this idea of how like it's okay not to be okay, right? That comes up a lot. And I truly believe that. Like I do believe that it's okay not to be okay. I do. And we talk about like, anxiety and depression. And so we've created a lot of awareness, right? We've created a lot of awareness. Part of the problem though is we have a lot of awareness. We don't have enough education and we don't have enough action, right? And so awareness, if you're just aware, if you're aware of the fact that so many people are struggling, if you're aware that you're struggling, you're aware that it's okay to struggle, but you don't know what to do or who to go to or what even means. Now you're just painfully aware and like it's just
Right.
going to hurt more. Or you know what I mean? Like you're
Yeah.
just going to hurt more. And so like part of it is we keep saying, let's break the stigma, break the stigma, break the stigma. And then we're like, it's okay not to be okay. It's okay. Like, let's talk more about it. Let's talk more about it. And I agree with all of it, but I think that like talking is only going to get you so far. Like you need to learn about it, right? Like you need to learn about it and then you need to actually put in action. So you need awareness, but then more importantly, you need education. And then beyond that, you need action. And so to me, it also has to do with the way we think about it, right? So this is what I say a lot is yes, it's okay not to be okay. But it should also be okay to be okay. It should be okay to be great. It should be okay to be thriving. Like why is our standard just let's accept and acknowledge that it's okay because nobody wants to not be okay. And then if you're talking about mental health and you're trying to draw coaches in the conversation and parents, a lot of them don't want to acknowledge that they're not okay and they don't want to talk about not being okay. Like you don't want to talk about your like your losses, you want to talk about your wins. And so if we start to redefine this idea of okay, we know that this is okay, but we actually can be happier. Like we can be happier. We can actually be like thriving, right? Like that is a real possibility. And here's what you need to know, and here's how you do it. And so take your physical health, like you talked about. If you think about nutrition and mobility and flexibility, and you just say, listen, you need to eat well. You need to get good sleep. Like you need to stretch. Like this is what people used to say a couple years ago, right? When you and I were competing and like who ate well, who stretched and who slept. No, like, okay, like I need to, but you know what? Like tell me why. But now you're like, no, no, no. If you're eating this kind of stuff, this is what it does to your body. This is what's going to happen to your muscles in terms of growth, right? This is when your muscles rebuild. This is da 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 da. Sleep, you start to understand why sleep is so important and also why the rates of injury go up significantly if you're even like an hour underslept. Like you start to realize flexibility. Like if you're stretching and you're doing your mobility, you're not only going to compete better, right? You're going to be able to be bigger, faster, stronger, but also you're less likely to get injured.
Mhm.
And even if you do get injured, your recovery is going to be better. So you start to realize these things are integral to actually allowing you to be better at what you want to be at, and they're going to prevent injury. If we think of this mental health as like if we invest in our mental health, we're actually going to be happier, healthier, and quote unquote more mentally tough, more adaptable, and we're less likely to have mental illness. Now people start to listen. They're like, wait, you're telling me I can win more? Like, I'm actually going to be able to like be mentally strong. I want to be mentally stronger. Like, you're telling me that I'm actually going to like be able to do this and do this and do this. Like, okay, what does that mean, doc? Like, what do I need to do? Like, how can I do that?
Yeah.
Now, what we've done is we're breaking the stigma because we're breaking and changing the language and we're changing the approach and it becomes much more about like not just prevention but about like optimization, right? And people want results, like people want to win, and if you tell somebody you follow this program you're going to win, everybody signs up. I want to buy that book, I want to do that program, I want to do that, right? Like that's what everybody's doing. Like if you eat this and this you're going to lose 20 pounds, great, I'm in. If I take this pill now, like I'm going to lose X amount of weight and I'm in. Like that's why these medicines and these different things catch on so quick because you can show very, very quickly that someone's going to get results, right?
Mhm.
And they're not necessarily then going to look at all, they're like, they're all in. We need to start to look at mental health that this is going to produce results. And not only going to be happier, you're going to be healthier, you're going to be mentally tougher, you're going to win more, you're going to be able to like show up better. You're going to like, if you can help somebody understand that, like we've been doing with flexibility and I mean, all these young athletes are all doing flexibility, they're all doing mobility, their nutrition is like, it's on point.
Yep.
Like they get it and they see it, right? But it's been explained to them. They all meal prep now. Like it's amazing. I had a freshman in college the other day. I said, take a picture. He goes, look at my fridge, doc. I go, take a picture of that, send it to me right now. I've never seen a freshman college fridge look like that. It's all meal prepped, right? And he's a
Amazing.
freshman. But like that's what's so important is he understands that by eating like this, I'm going to feel better, I'm going to be stronger, I'm going to get better. Enough people don't understand that by starting to invest in your mental health, by seeing somebody, by talking to somebody, by actually doing something about it, by doing mental training, which is something you can do, you can actually become mentally stronger, mentally happier, mentally healthier. And
Love
like
it.
at the end of it, like you're going to be better. Like you're going to be better. You're more likely to get your hand raised. And everybody wants that in the end, right?
And not just in your sport, but
In
everything in your life.
everything.
Like I love, thrive is such a great word. I think of a newborn, right? They're that first month, they're just you want them to eat and poop and all these things that you're literally calendaring, and you want them to thrive and grow. And you might have just coined your next the meal prep mentally. Like what does your mental fridge look like? Like I feel like we do a lot of awareness with if we're trying to break something. And then I like that we need to educate more. So whether it's onboarding coaches with, speaking about mental health or bringing it into their program, but then also taking action. How can we apply this to our day to day? How can we apply this to our team? We've talked a lot about team mantras, right? Like we're all on the same page. We're all kind of speaking this over our team, and we're going to be successful and confident. And you know, but I feel like that is really eye-opening, what you just said here about those. It's not just about awareness, it's about the education and then learning and taking action so that we can thrive in all areas of our life. So I love kind of wrapping up with that because it's kind of a nice bow. But there's so much more. We could definitely do a part two, and I would love to. How, just wrapping up here, what does Dr. T do daily to prep for his what's to come next, his day, What is there something every day you're just like, I'm doing?
Yeah, so this is what I mean. There's a lot, right? But the one thing that we talked about a little bit, but I think it's worth mentioning here is the way that I do my gratitude, right? So at the end of the night, I have what's called a gratitude challenge, and I think I've told you about it. But
Yeah.
what originally the way that it started and has continued is it was a challenge between my wife and I, where at the end of the night, right? Not at the beginning of the day, at the end of the night, she would say to me, "What's your one thing?" And I would have to list one thing that happened that day in my life that I'm most grateful for, right? Um, and I've said this before, right? But as much as I love my wife and we have a beautiful family and beautiful kids and we've had our own struggles with having kids, like we're thriving, right? We're thriving, right? So I love her, right? And I support her and she supports me. But like I'm an athlete, I'm a competitor. Like I want my one thing to be better. Like I want to beat her in the gratitude challenge. And so what happens, Robin, is I wake up and I'm looking for things. Like I'm looking for things constantly, right? Um, and every day I'm looking for things. And there are little things that I do to actively like seek those things out, right? Like my little boy, my little 4-year-old, controlling the controllables. Like every day I put my head on his head before he goes to school. And I say, Zane, what are we going to focus on today, right? And for him, the way that I've conceptualized the three controllables, right? It's be kind, right? That's attitude, work hard. And then I let him say the last one, which is have fun, right? And so every morning, be kind, work hard. And I go, what's the last one? And he goes, have fun, right? And I say it to him, but like, not only am I reinforcing it for him, I'm reinforcing it for him, for me, but that's my one thing. If nothing else happens that day, that's my one thing, right? Like my little baby, like I'll pick him up and I'll like hold him and I'll like, blow on his belly and like make him laugh. I always try to make him laugh before I leave because that might be my one thing.
Yeah.
I'm constantly looking, and the more I look, the more I find, right? When something positive happens, I celebrate it. I try to enjoy it. I try to like take a second to really like highlight it. Um, and when something challenging happens, right? Which almost happens every day, some days worse than others. But like if I focus on that, that's not going to help me win my challenge, right? And my goal is to win the challenge. So I have to reframe it or look how to learn from it. And so at the end of the night, she says her thing, I say my one thing, and that's how I end my day. And that's the last thought that goes in my head before I go to bed. What I've spoken to a lot of athletes about, right, and you've heard this, is that you don't have to be married to do this, right? You can do this with a significant other if you're in a relationship. You can do it with a friend, a sibling, a parent. But a lot of people don't want to do all that. And a lot of people's families don't want to get into all that. So I've also talked about you can do it yourself. Like you can do it for yourself. And so now, Robin, I have a section in my phone in my notes section. It says gratitude challenge, right? And every night, what I do is I write down one thing, right? I write down one thing. Right. Well, hang on. I write down one thing and, and I look forward to it. Like every night I'll be like, oh, here's my thing. Right. And I put it down. And so now I have a list of actionable things that happened in my life. And I have the date and when they happened, the date when it happened. And so if I'm having a rough day, it's right there. Right. If I'm having a great day, it's right there. But it keeps me accountable. And if I get away from it, which I'm human, I will. I'm like, oh man, I'm like something's missing in my life. And I go right back to it. So everything that I teach and everything that I talk about, I really try to do. When I work out, I always do one more. I truly do, right? And if I don't, it eats me away. Like I have to
Right.
go back and I do it. Um, but the gratitude thing, it's not three things, five things, because I find that people say the same things. It's one thing and it's one thing that happened that day. And so like if every day you go looking for something, you're more likely to find it. And that's how it is with mental health. Like if we're looking to be happy, we're going to find a way to be happy. If we're looking, and it may be that means we look to see a doctor. It means we look to take medication. It may mean we look to therapy. But if we really, really want something, we're going to find a way, right? And that's an important concept. And so for me to constantly look for things to be grateful for, it rewires my brain. It allows me to appreciate things. And it really makes things fun, right? So like right now, right, it's mid-afternoon on a Friday. This conversation with you is my one thing. Now, to be fair, Robin, it's only mid-afternoon on a Friday, so I got more time, right? So I'm gonna keep looking, but like it again, like just even that interaction we had and that look you got, like
Yeah.
it's such an important part of life, and it really
Brings
motivates and
joy.
inspires. But it inspires us. It motivates us, so we can do challenging, difficult things. Um, we can be better, right? When we focus on that, and so that's something I do daily. It's just I'm grateful that I've come up with it and been able to integrate it. I've talked to other people about it who have their own gratitude practices, and usually they're like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And I'm like, "But as an athlete, don't we want to challenge? Like, don't we want to be better? Like, right? Like,
Yeah.
you want to who it's like I always say this too is like the last thing I'll say is, when I talk to athletes, like they all want to be great. They all say they want to be great. But the reality is who really wants the ball in their stick at the end of the game? Who's really willing to take that last shot? Like, and if you really, really want to be great, you have to be willing to take that last shot. And to me, that gratitude challenge is like training myself to be able to take that last shot, right? Because it's like, what is the most important? What are you going to give most to? And what are you going to like call it out and be able to say it out loud or write it down? Like truly willing to like take that shot.
Yeah. Well, it's like a gift to wrap this all up because I feel like, if you took anything away from this podcast, that you would actually hang on and challenge yourself to that gratitude challenge, journal, come up with your thankful, what you're grateful for and thankful for. And it does make a difference. It really does. So, Dr. T, thank you so much for this time. And everything that you've said today is just, can't wait to listen back and take more notes. But what's the best way to get in touch with Dr. T? Because, as we get to know you more, if people want to reach out for any reason,
Yeah.
I want them to know.
No, I really appreciate that. So, I mean, Instagram is one that, is a medium that a lot of folks use. It's at Dr. T underscore sports psych. So it's DR period T and then underscore SPORTSPSYCH. Um, my website is mindsettraininginstitute.com. So you can access me there. There's also the email there is mindsettraininginstitute@gmail.com. People can send me a message, questions. I get them a lot. I'm happy to answer them. Um, and then I have a podcast too, right, which we're going to get you on. So now that
Okay.
I've said that, we have to make that happen. But it's called the Mindset Experience. So those are really kind of the best mediums that people can access me.
Awesome. And we'll when we post this, we will definitely add all of those just so you can get in touch with Dr. T. But Dr. T, thank you so much and just excited for what's to come with you. In January, hopefully we'll be meeting again with our
Awesome.
FCA team. So thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Take care.